Hey, what's going on, guys? And happy Sunday to all of you. Man, I sound a little hoarse. It was because the madness of March yesterday. I mean, we got two all-time classic games yesterday, and man,
Yes.
what a way to end Saturday. You know what I mean? And but yeah, I'm definitely glad to have Mario back. As you know, I'm Rios, your host, and again, I'm glad to have Mario back because that Make a Wish kid I had last week terrible. Don't
Oh no, was it that bad?
Nah, no, I
Oh,
appreciate it. I appreciate Daniel filling in for you last week, but nah, it's good to have you back, man.
no, good to be back. I didn't know we were gonna get another blast of winter. I just didn't know. We're already in April and I'm still wearing a hoodie. Like I'm
Yeah, I know. I woke
surprised.
up, I woke up and it was like 65 in my house. I'm like, why is it so cold? And I opened the
With
door.
the
I'm like,
game going on yesterday, this weather kind of fits kind of with the story. Like the craziness of the Texas weather with the craziness of the games in San Antonio, it just goes hand in hand. It seems like.
there you go. Couldn't have said it better. But yeah, let's dive right into it. So this week we're gonna, like I said, this is an emergency episode mainly because Houston won yesterday, and in one of the most improbable fashions that we've ever seen in our lifetimes. And we'll give you some numbers to show, like, really paints the picture of how improbable that win was, and how they really, really, really showed out yesterday, and they showed something that people haven't seen since the '60s. And I got a pretty interesting set that paints a perfect picture for that. So this is the largest second half comeback in NCAA tournament history since 1963 when Loyola came back when they were down 15 points in the second half. 1963.
Oh, I'm shocked. I'm shocked from what I was watching. I couldn't believe what I was watching while it was happening, and I was just again, I'm just a loss for word because it was just a shocking game. You know, they were down most of the time. U of H. They
Yeah,
just
the only time they led was when they were up 6-5 early in the first period.
they just seemed that they could never get over that hump. Just but they kept clawing away. They're chipping away here and there, just kind of defense. But they kept making a lot of mistakes. So it just things didn't seem to be going their way when it needed to go their way, and they just literally snatched the victory from the jaws of defeat. That's how crazy the game was.
It really was. Yeah, because they did not play their brand of basketball. They had a lot of turnovers early on. They had five,
Yes.
halfway through the first period. And then they were not making their shots. They were getting good looks.
Oh,
Their
yes.
set plays were good. They had good looks. It's just the ball was not going in the rim for either team. But I think for Houston, they've shown throughout the tournament that they go on these cold streaks offensively for minutes at a time. And against other teams, they kind of could get away with it. But Duke is one of the highest scoring teams in the nation. I mean, they
Hmm.
average over 75 points a game. They have the number one player in the country, Cooper Flag, who he put on a show yesterday.
Oh
Catch
yeah,
kid, he was impressive. He was by far the best player on the court that day
definitely, definitely.
on both ends of the
Hats
court,
off to
and defense.
hats off to Duke. Hats off to Duke because I didn't know they had that kind of defense in them. They usually won't talk about them on the offensive end. A lot of people say coming into this game, which I think played a factor at the end that they were never really tested.
Yeah, the announcers brought that up perfectly. That was the one knock on Duke going into this tournament. They've
Hmm.
won by double digits throughout the season. They play in a much easier conference than the Big 12 or the SEC. The
Oh
ACC used
yes,
to be big dogs in college basketball. Now, not so much.
definitely trying. The tide
So
is turning. Yeah.
they were really tested throughout the season, or even in the tournament for that matter. They've won comfortably every single game. They've led by double digits in every single game, including this one. But I think with this Houston team, because they are a group that's most of them are juniors and seniors. They're a little bit older. There's very few true freshmen on the team. Not a lot of
Yeah.
sophomores. You only have one transfer at Milos Uzan. But other than that, they're all homegrown. With Duke, it's a lot of transfers and first and second year players. So they don't have that experience of going deep into the tournament. And with these Cougars, they've experienced, some of them were on that Final Four team a few years ago. You have LJ Cryer, who won a national championship with Baylor, 4 years ago. You get these guys that, they come in as number one season, they get upset in the Sweet 16 and then lose in the Elite Eight. So they've tasted bitter defeat. And you could tell by their body language, even though they were down by double digits, like the game looked completely over. They were unwavering in their tenacity on both ends of the court. They never lost hope in themselves, and it translated into them making plays and making plays when they needed to.
Their brand, which is mainly centered around the defense, that's what saved them, because those inbound plays, wow, they never really go full court press. That's something they, but they'll press on the other half court. But it was something that they showed, like, hey, you know what? Just because we don't do it often doesn't mean we're not good at it. And they showed them, it showed that Kelvin Sampson, for being a defensive coach that he is, and you see the way these boys played last night, just like, wow, it's just incredible how far they've come, what they've done throughout the season. They had one of the hardest paths to the Final Four, versus the other teams. And whenever they played Tennessee, I expected that to be more of a defensive game, but they just ran over them. I didn't expect that to happen the way it did, but it showed just how good they really are. And people were sleeping on this U of H team. It was all about the Cooper Flags, the Walter Clayton Juniors, Auburn, they just, and then U of H is just kind of this, they're just kind of there. You're like, just kind of watch out for them, but just they're always just on the side. And so that's kind of what I was always getting from the national media, is just that U of H was just, they were good, but they were just good, and so, but with this win, I think it solidified the program at a national level, because they were able to finally get over the humps of, they can't make it to the Final Four. I mean, they can't win the game to get to this national championship. It's always something that's dogged the U of H since the Hakeem Olajuwon days, Five Slam Jam. It's been like a curse for them. But for them to, finally overcome all the adversity and make it to the championship game, it's like, wow, it's like, this is a program that a lot of players in the future are going to want to come to, because they see what's going on. They see what they're doing. And so that camaraderie that they have, you just can't get it by having, spending $20 million on the roster.
Yeah.
And you just, the turnover like that. So but it gives me hope for college basketball, that there's still teams, especially big teams, national teams like U of H, that, hey, they still kind of have that old school feel to it.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Sampson put it best. Like, their culture is they don't want entitled kids. Like, you have to buy into the culture, otherwise you're not going to play for this program. And I think a lot of schools have gotten away from that, especially with the NIL money. Which, hey, I think you're the bag. Hats off to those kids. But at the same time, like, if you're trying to build something, not just be a bunch of one and dones. Like, you really want to build a program, change a culture. Houston's provided the blueprint on how to do that.
Yes.
Look where they were a few years ago. You had Coach Sampson, on the campus with a bullhorn trying to get people to come back at the old the
Hofheinz. Oh man,
good memories there. I'm a huge alumni, and I went there for 4 years, and it has come a long, long way from when I went there. Back then, Hofheinz Pavilion, maybe on a good day you'd have half capacity. But Coach Sampson has turned that program around. They've really put money into the athletic department, and now they got the Fertitta Centers sold out every single game.
Yes,
it's an experience, and I mean that's just testament to what changing the culture can do. Because winning cures all, and then you change the culture and start winning, and look where they are now. Like, don't sleep on Houston, because they've gotten no love from the national media. it was just crazy because they're one of the number one seeds in the entire tournament. They're like, they're okay. It's basically the national consensus, and
Mhm.
people to see them do that against Duke, who was favored by Vegas to win the entire thing by a
Yeah,
lot.
you know what? After the broadcast, you had the Kenny Smith. Shout out to Kenny. Because he said I played on two championship basketball teams here in Houston, and he said I ripped the title Clutch City off my shirt and give it to this team right here because that was right there's Clutch City.
Yeah,
And it's not just it's just not a moniker. It's a real thing here in the city of Houston. Like, hey, there's clutch here. And it's not just in basketball. It's all this. Whenever it happens in any sport here, hey, Clutch City. And it's just something that will never die, something that will always live. And then yesterday, Kenny, let
carrying
them
that
know,
mark.
hey, this team is for real. And I'm going to give them that title. I'm going to give them that moniker because of what I just seen. Um, and what they just did. And so that speaks volumes for him to even say something like that. To make those comments speaks a lot about the program, Kelvin Sampson, and
How far they've
the
gone,
boys that were playing. The men. I'm sorry, the men that were playing last night.
right?
But
Not but like just to get
wow,
into some of the numbers for the game yesterday. Like I said, it was not the prettiest basketball. And it's funny
no,
because I can't remember which of the analysts said it before the game. He's like, if Duke scores more than 75 points, they're going to win. Which is what they've been averaging for the most part throughout the season and the tournament. Houston held them to 67 points, their second lowest output of the entire season. I think
Jesus.
this speaks volumes to Houston's defense. And leading the way was, the top defensive player in the nation, Tugler. He had 4 blocks, and he was all over the court, even though he made some errors. Even
Yeah,
more,
yes,
I
he
thought
did.
I was going to end the game with that hitting the ball when he was trying to inbound it, which gave him a technical and a 1+1. I was like, that would be the worst way for that game to end. But as we all saw, it did not end there.
Oh,
It was
no,
just one of the most improbable things I've ever seen in my lifetime, for sure. In any sport, it's it for me to speak on a different sport. It reminds me of the Super Bowl that was also played here in Houston when the Falcons were winning. Tom Brady and the Patriots, 28-3. That image that
it was
always sticks in
over.
my mind is Brady with his head down. They're down 28-3, and after that moment, he showed everybody why he's the GOAT.
The game was over. That
It was over.
everyone was like, "This is it." But again, just like in that game, they started making little
Little
plays
by
that
little.
would matter in the end, and that's what U of H was doing. They just consistently made the same. They played their brand of basketball, and it ended up paying off because they stick to who they were, and that's what Sampson was saying. Kelvin, sorry,
They
he's
don't
like,
know
we
how
got to
to
say
ever.
we got to stick to our brand.
Yeah,
You know, at the halftime, like, hey, what do you got to do? We got to stick to our brand. You know, uh, in the first half, they were just not playing like themselves, and you can see it. They were anxious. They were out of whack. The defense was just not there. Um, they were giving a lot of defensive errors were happening in the first half, and you could just see it. You could just see that we're not ready at that time. But come second half, it started changing. They started getting back to, hey, this is how we're supposed to play. And they showed it. Hey, we're defense. We score here, and they slowed it down a lot, and that did have me worried because a lot of time was coming off the clock. They would wait maybe till what 8 seconds on the clock, and then they would make their play. Again, when I was watching, it was worrying me just because, like, hey, you don't have the time to play like that because y'all are down by so much, but they stick to it, and sure enough, it worked out. Like, it just worked out for them, and it's just crazy. Again, I'm still in shock just because of the way it happened, and you just did not see this coming, or at least I didn't see it coming.
no, I don't think anybody did.
And
Besides
and
those
it
in
was
the
just
court.
yeah, and it was just like it was just a wild moment, especially for the tournament. Tournament's been great. We have a lot of great games, especially having 4 number 1 seeds in the Final Four hasn't happened in a while.
Second
Um,
time ever.
and so
which is crazy.
Yeah, so, you know,
In the entire
uh,
history of the tournament, it's only happened twice.
so it's like, you know, people want to see the best, they got the best. And
Oh,
they got
most
some of the best games. Florida, the Florida U Auburn game, you know, that was another comeback game. So we got two comeback games.
yeah.
You know, it just makes your heart race.
Yeah,
You know,
Florida was down by 8 points, and they were able to pull it off at the end. And it was kind of funny seeing Charles Barkley's reaction because he's an Auburn alumni, and just
definitely, yeah.
seeing him go through all the emotions, like, yeah, I've been there, bro. I feel you. I've been there myself.
But you know, one of the stats that I seen, hopefully I don't get it wrong, but at halftime they were saying that when Houston was down going into the half, they were 6-1.
Yeah, that's correct.
6-1. Like
When
that
trailing,
tells you something. Like, don't count them out. You know, so that was a stat. You know, whenever I heard it, it's like this is
that's
insane.
happened to 6 out because usually when teams are trailing at halftime, they don't. But that's testament to coaching because he made the adjustments. It's funny. So on our last episode, me and Eduardo were talking, and he was saying, "Hey, Duke has they have too much offensive firepower. They got the best player in the country." He's like, there's no way they lose, basically. And I was saying, you know what? You can always have the best. We've seen multiple times teams have the
Yeah,
best
yeah,
player in the country. It doesn't mean they're guaranteed a national championship because ultimately it comes down to two things: coaching and being battle tested. Those are my two sticking
yes,
points. Is why I picked Houston to beat Duke last week because I was like, these guys have been battle tested. And Coach Sampson is one of the best coaches in the country, if not the best coach. He has shown it time and time again, just with that stat you gave. 6-1 when trailing at halftime. Most teams
insane.
don't usually come back and win games in the
No,
second half. That's just testament to to his leadership and his in-game adjustments. We've seen it throughout this tournament, especially when they beat what was it? Gonzaga with that inbounds play.
oh yeah, oh, chef's kiss.
Exactly, like that his basketball IQ is just on a different level, and he is a leader of men, and he is able to draw these plays to put his guys in the best position to be able to win games. And we've seen it throughout the entire tournament. I've told people like, hey, Cooper Flags, he's the real deal, obviously, but
Of course, yeah.
they have a well-rounded team. But at the end of the day, like these guys weren't tested all year, and Houston's a team full of dogs. They said
Oh yeah.
that was what they said last week. I can't remember which player had said it. That was when they were playing Tennessee. It's basically two dogs, one bone.
Oh,
Well, I
oh
mean,
man, yeah.
last week wasn't a contest, but that's the mentality these guys bring. Like if you watch their if you watch their workouts, all these dudes run the mile in under 6 minutes. Like I
Mm.
remember who said it. He's like, basically, UOH is two hoopers and three guys that can play for the Steelers. Like that's how physical they play, but that's the style of brand of basketball that Coach Sanchez has instilled in this program, and it's brought a lot of success, more success than they've seen since Phi Slam and Jamma. Because at the end of the day, defense wins championships, and they have a chance
Yes,
Monday night to show like, hey, we're the number one nation in the defense. Got like Kobe said, job's not finished.
it's not finished. It felt like the game felt like it was a final, like the final game, just because of the of course you're playing against Duke. You know, everyone knows Duke, but then you have Cooper Flag, of course, number one, college player, and you know just from what I heard, the commentary was more biased toward Duke. You know, hey, Duke this, Duke
No, I
that.
mean,
So
they're the so I get it.
yeah, I understand, but at the same time, it's like just the magnitude of the game, it was it was just so big, and just I guess the way it ended, it made it felt more like a final, like the final championship game, just because of how it ended. It was just crazy. It was a crazy thing. But
I
of
mean,
course,
honestly, that should have been a national championship game.
you know,
It could have been. Well, I had said last week, I said whoever wins this game between Houston and Duke's going to win it all because these are the top two teams in the country. No disrespect to Florida or Auburn, but one with Houston is just they have the number one defense in the nation, and there are no slouches on the offensive side of the ball. And with Duke, they had the best player in the country, and they had a very well rounded roster, and they have
Yes, they did.
they have a lot of tall players on their team. They have I think height wise they're the tallest team in the tournament as well. Like they have a lot of length on the floor, and it at times it showed when they were beating Houston's bread and butter is attacking the boards on offense and defense. But Duke was
Yes,
beating their
yeah,
own game for a while because they had the length, they had the taller players, and they were, you know, out dogging Houston at times.
yeah. Shout out to Jawan Roberts. He had the toughest defensive task out there with
Guarding
being
Cooper
on
Flag.
Cooper Flag, and that's no easy feat. Cooper went off for
He's
with
going to get his.
20.
He
Yeah,
had
he
20.
got his. He was scoring, and but when it mattered, whenever the last possession of the game, when Duke had a chance there at the end to sink that, Jawan Roberts was there and he was on the whole time. He didn't let up, and it just shows that defense that he had, that heart. They keep it going. We're going to keep going to the end, and he, that defense and the end showed up, and he was able to play a part in Cooper not making that last shot. But Juwan Roberts for me, player of the game. Just because of the defense that he played, never wavered. He was a dog. He wanted the ball. He got the ball. He was able to score. You could tell he's frustrated at times because the refs were letting them boys play, and so they were just not calling some things that he was probably used to getting those calls. But he persevered, and now they're dancing all the way to the championship. So it's just for him being a senior too. It means it's just that much more sweeter for him to be able to like, hey, this is it. This is my last run, and now look where him being staying with the program.
six
Following.
years.
That's a long time.
6 years. He
Samson
was,
loves
he
him like
was the only player that played in that Final Four a few years ago where they lost. And yeah.
yeah, but shout out to him for what he did, for everything he's done for the program, and it's just going to carry into the championship game.
Now, just to put into perspective how good Houston's defense was yesterday. So Duke had 2 field goals in the last 13 minutes of the game. 2 field goals. That was it.
Jesus.
Yeah, they had 2 field goals, the last 13 minutes. Houston was down by double digits with less than 2 minutes to play. They won on an 11-1 run in the last minute and 14 seconds. 9-0 run in the last 30 seconds.
Gee.
In the last 3 minutes of the game, they allowed Duke to score 0 field goals. I mean, they were just getting it done on both ends. I mean, just hearing those numbers like really puts into perspective how improbable it was. They went on a 9-0 run in the last 30 seconds. Like that's Tracy McGrady territory.
Whoa. I was
13 points in 33 seconds. That's basically what they did yesterday. It was just something you don't see. And for that to happen in San Antonio, of all places, too, because it just gave me Tracy McGrady vibes what they did in the last 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was looking at the highlight reels, the game reel. So with 1:14 left, they were down 61-66. Tugler, he hit the ball during the inbound. So then that allowed Duke to go up to 67-61. Then, they were able to deny the ball, Knipple. That was like 47.5 seconds left. Still down by 6. Sharp almost lost the ball at the top. Passed to Milos. Milos passed it back. He made the 3. So now 3-point game with 32 seconds left. Like this is just how crazy the sequence was in the last minute. It's U of H stole the inbound. Wilson went for the 3, missed it. Tugler was in the right spot
at the right
to
time.
get that ball and slam it home. That made it 66-67. Proctor misses a field goal, the 1-for-1. U of H gets the foul, which it's a no controversial call there. I didn't think it was too bad.
Yeah.
Cooper Flag was over the back, but they got the call. So Roberts goes, knocks 2 down.
And you know what's crazy about that? He's a
Hey,
62% free throw shooter. 62. He is not a good free throw shooter, and he hit both.
no, he's not. So then this is just within the last minute and 14 seconds. And then he makes the 2 shots. They go up by 1. Flag, of course, gets the inbound, misses. Proctor gets another chance to shoot. Complete air ball. Game over. This is this is one of the most improbable wins I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I just could not believe what I was watching. I could even what's his name on the broadcast booth. He was like, I was here and I can't believe what I was watching.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I was at a loss for words. And even now, it's still kind of hard to capitulate it into words.
yes.
These aren't things you normally see, especially this time of year. And here's the crazy thing: it's like someone that tweeted this out. Duke led by 14 with 8 minutes left. Duke led by 9 with 2 minutes left. Duke led by 6 with 34 seconds left. Duke led by 3 with 25 seconds left. Duke led by 1 with 19 seconds left. Duke lost the game. Like that game was over with 2 minutes left. But like I said, they won on the Tracy McGrady run where they just scored a bunch of points with little to no time left and pull off the most improbable win that it's the 5th largest comeback in NCAA history. This tournament's been going on since the 50s, 40s. Like, it's been going on for a very long time. This is the 5th largest one in the entire tournament's history against the heavily favored, Duke Blue Devils. Like,
yes,
Hollywood couldn't write a better story than
and there is no better story than that. And Kelvin Sampson at the end, he has some great words. He's like, no one ever loses at anything as long as they don't quit. That was his quote from last night after the game, And so it's true, this U of H team, they never quit. And like I said, they just kept making, I would say, the right plays, and they just kept playing their defense, and it just felt like it literally felt like Legos at the end. Everything just came together, and they built, this beautiful pathway to the championship game. It's just so crazy how everything fell apart, how everything fell in the end. Like, it's just, again, they went on a 13-3 run in the last 2 minutes. So it's just like, and those weren't even like real shots. There's just like a couple of free throws here and there. They got the flagrant, they had the free throws. So it's just like, so it's just a wow situation.
But no, here's the crazy stat. So this is from OptaStats. So Duke is the only team to have in tournament history to have a higher field goal percentage, more free throw attempts, more assists, fewer turnovers, more steals, and still lose the game. In tournament history, teams that are number one in that have won 335 times. 335 times to 0 when teams accomplish those stats. Now it's 335 and 1.
This game is literally going to feed the stat guys for generations.
It really is. Like, I'm a huge stat junkie, and like, just when I was doing my homework for this, I'm like, this is insane. Like, if you look at the numbers, don't even look at the box score, just look at the numbers. You're looking at like, there is no way Duke lost this game. But again, those guys made plays when they needed to. Like, they never gave up. They stuck true to their identity, and guys, made plays when needed to. I mean, my player for the game was LJ Cryer. He has not had the last 2 games. I think one game he had like 5 points. His last game wasn't that great either. This game, he put on the performance of his career. He finished up with, I got it pulled up right here. He played the entire game. He didn't sit down at all. He was the only player that played the entire game. Never took a breather. So he shot 8 of 14 from the field, 6 of 9. I think that was really key.
Huge.
They were not shooting good from the field, but they were hitting threes when they needed to, and that's what kept them in the game and allowed them to be able to have a chance to win at the end. Finished also had 5 rebounds, 1 assist, and 26 points. Second leading scorer in the game behind Cooper Flag at 27. But I mean, when the team needed, because everyone was struggling shooting the ball from the field yesterday. Uzan had one of his worst games of the tournament. He couldn't get a bucket to fall. He was able to get it going in the second half by driving a little bit more and not settling for threes. He drove it to the basket, was able to get it into a little bit of a groove. But other than that, everyone was struggling shooting the ball. And I think they pulled Cryer out for maybe a second for one possession. And the sequence of events were like they just airball like 3 times in one possession. Like, okay, I need them back out there because no one could hit a shot in because there was out of LJ Cryer.
I feel watching the game, Duke in the first half, they were just on defensively. They were blocking all the passing lanes. They were just not allowing U of H to penetrate on the inside. And so all they had to really work with was the outside shots on the 3-point line. And Cryer was the only one that was really, like you're saying, was making those big shots to keep them close in the game. And because it was already getting away from them at that point in the first quarter. But Cryer with those big threes kept them close. And again, he was one of the big reasons why they won the game at the end, because he was able to keep that game close for the team. He was the only one scoring, like you said. Duke was just on defensively. They just could not get anything going on the inside. Juwan Roberts was having a hard time, backing down, being able to catch the ball. They were playing some great defense on him. And it was just really tough on the interior in the first half. But I think the first couple of plays, when they came back in the second half, one of the commentators said it kind of best. Hey, it seems that Houston has found a little wrinkle in the Duke defense, and they were able to exploit that all the way into the end. And so that's something that you're saying they made the adjustments at the halftime. Kelvin was able to see that and, adjust accordingly. And the players, again, kudos to a lot of the players because they were able to, play, how do you say, put the work out there that Kelvin's vision had. They were able to, hey, this is what I want you to draw. We're going to draw this up, execute it, and they executed everything to the T. And that's what they've been doing all season, the whole time they've been together. And it's just, Cryer never wavered and kept that game within striking distance, and it sure enough helped them propel them to a win. His game, it was that good. And no one was talking about him really. Nobody was giving him the credit still, even in the end. Like, hey, you know what? That's why we're here to highlight that. Hey, this team has some dogs, like you're saying. Cryer's one of the biggest dogs on this team. Milos was off, but he carried that team like they know he should because he's the go-to scorer for them.
Yep.
So the way he goes is the way the team's gonna go, and sure enough. All the way to the W.
On the season, Cryer's averaging around 15 points. He's Houston's leading scorer at 15 points. When the team needed him the most, he almost doubled his season output. He had 26. Without, he sat on the bench for maybe a second. That's just, kudos to him. And he has a chance to make history. If Houston wins the national championship, he's going to go down as a 2-time champion with 2 different programs, with Baylor and with the University of Houston. I mean, that's crazy to think about.
It's just so many things came out of this game that was very unexpected. And I think this team's been through so much that it'll be tough to see them if they, lose the final, just because this is this is it. They've vanquished the big Duke. That's Duke. Everyone knows Duke. Even Krzyzewski's not there no more, but that doesn't mean they're still not a powerhouse.
Yeah,
You've seen it all season. The highlights constantly of Cooper Flag. Now that the NBA draft is going to come pretty soon after the finals, but they're already talking about Cooper Flag #1 prospect.
easily.
So yeah, and hands down, no one's above him. So it's just they just had that. It was always there. Hey, this is the #1 draft pick. This is the #1 draft pick. The Cooper flag. And I get it, but at the same time, they didn't let it. Juwan Roberts at the end said, "Hey, I practiced my free throws, so I know when I went there, I wasn't nervous, I wasn't scared, and he hit those 2 shots
Yeah.
because again, it's something that he's done, and he's done it millions of times. So why should he be anxious or scared at a time like that? These players are there for the big time. This is the big show, and they've been one of the top programs for a while, so they know how to play in the spotlight. So it's something like as simple as free throws. Hey, you know what? They made their free throws at the end. Proctor missed his free throw. Look what happened there. That
And
that was very much the reason why they lost the game, because he missed that free throw. Juwan Roberts was able to get the call, the over the back call, and then looking back and forth. If he makes that, we don't know what happens after that. So that's kind of was a turning point. It was crazy. It was at the very end, seconds on the game, seconds that happened, and U of H just flipped the script on them at the very end. And you know what? They end up winning.
no, here's a crazy stat for you. So typically teams shoot the 2 better than the 3. Yesterday, Houston
Mhm.
shot from 2-point range 37.7%.
Oh no.
In
Oof.
3-point range, 45.5. That was a big difference offensively for Houston. They were able to hit their threes and hit them in a timely fashion because they were not being able to hit any jump shots yesterday. It just the ball wasn't falling for them. It happens. It's
Of course.
basketball. It happens. But them being able to hit the three ball, I think was what really separated them from Duke because Duke didn't shoot that great from the three, and Houston did, and that was the big difference. That's what helped
Yeah,
claw
that's
away
very true.
a little that 14-point deficit and gave them a chance to win it.
You
'Cause
know,
Uzan- I mean, Uzan wasn't hitting threes, but Cryer was, and Sharp. Sharp was clutch
oh
towards the end as well. I think he was a big proponent of that last second comeback as well. Like he was a big part of the offense because he was just all over the place, and he was hitting shots
yes,
he needed to, and he was hitting his free throws when he needed to, and he
he
kept them in.
was. Yeah, he
It
was
was
quiet all game. He was pretty much quiet all game until the very end. The drive in to draw the foul, the 3 point, like he was really asserting himself toward the end. I felt maybe he should have, done that toward the beginning of the game. That's something. He's a strong guy. He's a big guy, and he could back down some players. Of course, that's not his main
it's not right.
strength, but to know that you could just turn it on is something that really enabled him to like, hey, I'm gonna go get this foul. We need points, and I'm gonna go get this foul, and get some points.
Yeah,
Let me shoot this three.
he didn't shoot good from two. He was 4 of 13 from the field, but from three, he was 3 of 7. But those threes came in the second half when they were, mounting their comeback and cut it down to a one possession game. Like it's just there was just so many guys that contributed at key moments. It's hard to list them all, honestly. And a lot of
Yes,
them did stuff that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, like with Tugler. His defense was key. He was helping slow down the other guys. I mean, Cooper Flag was going to get his, but so was Roberts. Roberts was getting his on the offensive side, and he's slowed him down a little.
yes.
Cooper Flag looked like he's going to have like 40 or 50 points yesterday. He looked unstoppable at times, but he had a much. They made adjustments in the second half, and they did slow him down. And especially towards the last 2 minutes, I didn't re- you didn't see much of an impact for Flag in those last 2 minutes.
No, he was very quiet. He didn't really. I didn't see, at least. Maybe I'm just not recalling correctly. I didn't really see him going for the ball. hey, give me the ball. You know, usually
Well,
you see the
they tried.
superstars.
Houston's game plan, they were like, if someone's going to beat us, it's not going to be Cooper Flag. It's going to be somebody else. And they couldn't
Yeah.
get it done.
But I didn't really see him with the ball too much at the end. Krenipple was the one I seen mainly with the ball. He was actually he had a great game too. He was doing some damage from the three.
He
Um,
was.
he was really playing hard. And I thought, because he was man, there was time where he just crippled the U of H team, and you can just tell, like, man, this is like what you can tell U of H was like kind of had their hands up sometimes, kind of dogging each other, like, hey, what's going, because like, man, like, you letting this guy shoot, and he's knocking him down. So, there was, he had a great game, and I thought he probably would have been the X factor for Duke. But in the end, they were able to shut everybody down, close off a lot of the passing lanes. It was even hard for Cooper Flag to get the ball to get that inbound. Um, you know, but again, the inbound, whenever they couldn't move the ball anymore because of someone touched it, that really hurt Duke because they needed to be able to run up and down that inbound line. So because he couldn't do that, that was all Houston ball right there. They were going to get that ball some way or another, just because they were just so they were scrappy. They were scrapping for everything. So they scrapped for that one, and it just showed like how much of the defense really played, in this game.
Yeah, I think the key adjustment in the second half was Houston making Duke play their brand of basketball.
Yes.
Because Duke is a high scoring team that runs up and down the court. They're not really a half court team. Houston's bread and butter is half court offense, half court defense. They're not going to press you, full court because you can expose that. Coach Sampson has his guys, get set up, and we're going to make this a half court game on both sides of the ball. And little by little, that's how they started chipping away. They made Duke play their brand of basketball. It's not. Is it the prettiest version of basketball? No, but it's effective. It gets the job done. It wins games. It allows you to
You
mount
know,
the back in tournament history. Like it works.
Duke center. I don't even Malouch.
Mhm.
Is that his name? Malouch.
Close enough.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, but he was winded. He was tired. He was gassed at the end of the game, and you could just tell when he was on the bench and they were showing those shots of him. He was grasping for it, just like he was so tired. And
They were in a
you know,
dogfight this way.
yeah, and he just could. In the end, he had weak legs. He was just not being the contributor that you thought he would be at 7'2", tallest person on the court, and um, U of H just minimized everything that he did. They're like, hey, they literally took him out. He wasn't getting the rebounds. He wasn't, on both defense and offensive. He wasn't putting up second up shots. Those tip-ins that usually a big guy would get.
Alley oops.
Those
They caught all of them.
and so they really minimized his contributions toward the end, and just pretty much like, hey, where did this guy even go? Like, is he still on the court? Like,
Right.
because he just did not play that much of a factor. And again, it always comes back down to the defense. But again, they were able to, take him out the game, and everyone else had. It's just crazy to see how when you start looking at the game at the little things, that how effective U of H was in executing their defense, and how successful they were.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's hard to put into words what we witnessed yesterday.
Yes.
It is. And the funniest thing is hearing it from people that aren't fans of the team, or haven't really been paying attention to them too much, and they're like, I did. They're like, I didn't think Houston would come back. I didn't know they had that kind of dog in them. Like, we've been saying this for years. Y'all just haven't been paying attention.
Yeah, true. Yeah, you got your bandwagon fans that come in and like, oh, but the stats were there, and they were on Houston's side. That's the funny thing, is that the stats were on Houston's side,
Yeah,
especially going down at halftime, 6-1, winning the game when they're losing at halftime. It's just not something you see, like we're saying before, just something you don't see. And that's not a stat that should be. No one should have a stat like that because it's so hard to come back, especially in college, because of how long the periods are. You don't got quarters, you got a full half, you got to continue to play. So it's just continuous ball. It's so easy to get tired. But Kelvin Sampson has his team well conditioned. It showed they were up to snuff at the end. They were not tired. They could keep going another 5 more minutes.
They could play. They could play a whole other game afterwards.
But Duke, it affected Duke so much. You can see, like I was saying, the center. I don't want to screw up his name, but you can see how tired they were. You can just see it in their face how flushed they were.
Even after the game, they
exhausted.
They had Cooper Flag on a cart taking him to the locker room because they were all gassed. Like they weren't prepared for that. Like their preparation is a lot much different than Houston's. Houston's preparation is like I've seen their workout videos. These dudes hit the gym hard, and all of them run the mile in under 6 minutes. That's insane.
And that's something that you never really hear from a team. Like, hey, my team is running miles, and they're running it within this certain time. That's not something I've heard from like another team ever really. Hey, they're in the track right now. They're doing track runnings, just something. That's something.
Weight room.
Yeah, that's something I've never heard before, or maybe they do it, but it's nothing that has ever been highlighted as, hey, this is what we do as part of our workout. Even at the NBA level, you don't really see anybody run the track. So it's just to be that versatile and being able to pull it all together. It just shows hey, we may not beat you like with the continued offense, the score, all the scoring, but we're going to beat you because our stamina is going to be high and the defense is going to be there. And it just showed like, hey, like I said, they could have kept going for much longer and they would have been content and fine. But Duke again was struggling at the end. I think they were just tired. It just came down to being tired. They didn't have the legs under them, and they just couldn't put up. They just couldn't keep up. And in the end, they just couldn't keep up. And so, U of H, you can say, ran them out the gym.
Pretty much. Like, they're not going to blow you out of the water with their scoring, but they're going to keep you from playing your version of basketball. You're going to make you play their version, and you're going to have to outdog them. And so far, they haven't been outdogged by anybody. Yeah, they've essentially lost one road game the entire season. I mean, they're playing in San Antonio. I guess you can call it a home game, but it's really not, because if you look at the broadcast yesterday, there was much
Duke everywhere.
There was red.
Yeah, it's just, Kelvin Sampson. So I wanted a home team. I want this to be a home game, but it's tough. The prices are tough. It's tough for a lot of people to pay those prices for those games. They're expensive, especially when you go to the Duke game, Final Four. Of course, those prices going to go sky high. But the student section was loud. They were with it, and they were bringing it. I heard them on the broadcast. I heard the Spirit of Houston, the chants, and they, whenever they showed them on the broadcast, they sometimes you just see fans, they'll just cheer here and there. I mean, but they were ripping the shirts off and doing all this crazy stuff. So they were really invested into the game. And I'm glad that the student section showed out for the team, that they had a lot of supporters there. I know I seen that tonight they're going to have a pep rally at 6 p.m. at the Alamo Dome. I mean, at the Alamo.
Oh, okay.
So if there's anybody going, be sure to join that pep rally. Because the team is moving on to the final championship game against Florida, and that's again. Just because they made it doesn't mean it's over. It's not going to be easy task. They still got to play the game. The ball's going to bounce the way it's going to bounce. But they have a chance. They have one of the biggest chances to win this game. I don't know what the odds are looking like. I don't know who the bettors are betting on.
Right, it's actually pretty close. Right now, they have Florida as a 1-point favorite, which is not too bad. They predict a close game because these two teams are pretty evenly matched. Because again, I think Florida, they're very similar to Duke. They got a superstar in Walter Clayton, excuse me. That guy was good, man.
Yeah, I think the last team that U of H was similarly matched, Tennessee. Everyone thought that was going to be a dogfight, but look what happened there. They ran with it. They ran away with that game. I feel if Florida has kind of the same matchup, that U of H should do the same. They're just probably going to run away with it again. Anything can happen, but I do expect U of H to come out as the champions. Just because they've been there, the adversity they've been through, the hardest route to get to the Final Four. And they proved it time and time again, even in close games. When just like, hey, they were able to win all those close games. Gonzaga was a game that hey, it was a tough team. Gonzaga is not, they don't have the star power that they used to, but that doesn't mean they're still not a great program. And so they showed, hey, we're still good. But in the end, U of H was able to squeak that one out. And so, even those close games, U of H just somehow manages to find a way to win. And I feel the same way it's going to maybe happen with Florida. They're going to find a way to win. I think they're going to be the champions of this March Madness.
Yeah, before I give my prediction, I want to touch a little bit on the Rockets. So they actually have a chance today to lock down the number 2 seed. So if the Thunder beat the Lakers and the Rockets win their match today, they secure the number 2 seed in the entire West, which is it feels weird to say because my prediction for them at the beginning of the year was I was like they'll be a playoff team, but maybe like a 7 or 8 seed or maybe a 6 seed. I did not envision them being a number 2 seed.
I know last time we spoke, I would say, hey, they're going to be in the 4th, 5th, right there in the midsection. But they started really putting it together and started hammering these teams. They're not just, winning a couple games. They were hammering. They beat OKC. They beat the brakes off OKC. And that was a game that I thought, was going to present a lot of challenges for them because it's OKC. They haven't done too well against OKC sometimes, but they are the only team to have beaten OKC and Cleveland
twice.
So, and then Sengun said it too. He's like, hey, when we're on, no one's beating us. So, this team is riding a wave of confidence and it's showing on the court. They're really putting it together. I went to the game on against Utah. Utah's the last team in the West, but that does, it still shows again, there's always teams that play down to the level of the other team, but the Rockets did not. They dominated them. And I was at the game and just like, wow, I was watching them play defense. They were just, kind of reminded me of the U of H team because they're just dogs. They're just scrapping. And for them to do that at the NBA level, it's tough because the NBA level is a different game, but they're able to do kind of because they're young. Of course, they're a young team, but they're able to bring some of those college basketball identities a little bit here and there, insert it there. And it's just showing they just don't not give up. Their 3-pointers have been, they've been making threes like crazy recently. But they have a lot of confidence, and the Rockets, like, wow, like I am surprised. They surprised me by going on the run that they've done, because this team has a lot of inconsistencies coming in, within the last couple months. But again, like I said, I feel like they're turning it around when I watch this team, and like they really put it together, and they're doing it at the right time because playoffs are right around the corner, literally right around the corner, a couple weeks, and then the season's going to be over. The NBA season's going to wrap up, and they'll be the number 2 seed, and then we'll watch the playing game. So it's just a lot to look forward to, especially with the Rockets coming up. A lot of excitement, and I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm ready to see these boys play in the playoffs because it's going to be a lot.
Yeah, it's again when teams go through like a rebuild process, it takes several years. Or in the Philadelphia 76ers case, almost a decade. But with this Rockets team, what they've been able to accomplish post James Harden is just something to be studied. Honestly, they went from being a 17-win team to a 20-win team to 21 to 41 last year, and this season 50 plus. With still several games left in the season. It's just again when you have the right culture in place, like something we've kind of been hammering on these episodes the last few weeks. Culture, it really does make a difference. Look at the University of Houston basketball program. They changed the culture, and they're playing in the national championship game. With the Houston Rockets, they've changed the culture with Coach Udoka, and look at them now. They have a chance to be the number 2 seed in the West. In the West, where basically every team on the West would be a higher seed in the East. Like it's just hats off
Yeah.
to those guys. I mean, they really turned the franchise around. And anyone that's been paying attention to this team since post James Harden, the first building block was them getting Jalen Green at the number 2 overall
Mhm.
draft. But getting Sengun in the same draft and watching those 2 players evolve into the guys that they are now, you have
Yes.
Sengun, who's an all-star, Jalen Green, who post All-Star break has been playing like an all-star. When those two
Yes.
when those 2 guys are clicking, and then you have an emerging superstar in Amen Thompson. I mean, this team they could be a problem for a lot of teams in the playoffs. It's one of those teams like Coach Sampson said yesterday, don't sleep on Houston. That applies to the Rockets as well. You don't want to sleep on this team because they play hard
No.
defense.
No.
And once they get going offensively, they are tough to stop.
It's so funny how talking about these 2 teams and how alike they are. Like,
Really are.
there's a lot of the similar coaches, they have the same kind of mentality about defense and we're gonna play our brand of basketball, we're gonna do this and that, changing the culture. It's just crazy how similar these teams are. They're scrappy, they're not gonna give up, and Jalen Green, I'm happy to see that his inconsistencies are kind of, fading away. He's trying to shredding that off of him. Like, hey, I know how I used to play like this, but these past couple games, he's been amazing. And this team, I just, you could go down the line. Thompson.
Reed Shepherd's turning it
He's
around.
it's
Beginning of
just
the season,
it's just so crazy. Smith Jr. coming back. Look at him now. Like it's just this team is stacked. I feel this team is stacked. Even from the bench, they don't have any sleepers. They don't have any slouches on the bench. The bench even is one of the most scrappiest benches I've seen. Reed Shepherd. When I was at the game, I'll tell you this. So Reed Shepherd came in. Of course, it was the trash minutes, but the fans were, oh my god! Every time he didn't even have the ball. The fans were just Reed the whole time. They wanted him to. They feed them the ball. He made a couple of threes. The fans were going crazy. So that's another future star there. So this team has stars that they're building in the pipeline, waiting to come up the pipeline. So that's it's crazy to see that this team should be good for a long time. And I don't see Tillman Fertitta really not backing up the Brinks truck because he knows he's a winner. He wants to win, and so I see him in the long run. Hey, we're going to sign Sengun to these long-term deal, Green because they've showed who they are and look what they are now, number 2 seed. You like I said, we never would have said, last year, hey, I don't know. They're gonna be, you couldn't be confident and say, oh, they're gonna be one of the top 2 teams in the West.
no.
Like because they were still so young and inconsistent. But now, as you're seeing them progress and they're playing more and they're really gelling a lot together, it's just like, man, this team's really coming together. And I'll go back to what Sengun and say, hey, whenever we're on it, we're tough to beat. You're not going to beat us. So it's just so funny how these teams have so much similarities and they're in the same city. It's just that crazy.
Not just the 2 basketball teams, the Texans as well. The football team is just
Everything.
people don't realize how important culture is to a franchise. You get the right culture in place, you're going to be a winning team for years upon years. Have that cornerstone in place first. If you don't have that cornerstone, it's tough. You'll beat the Cleveland Browns.
I don't want to be too premature, but I'm just gonna throw it out there to say that hey, I was one of the first people to say it. But we could be entering a golden age within the city of Houston. Sports, you still have the Astros who's still contending. The Rockets are major contenders. The Texans are, they're contending. Everyone is contending. It's not just hey, I'm going to root just for the Astros just because they're the only ones in the city who are really winning. That's how it was for a long time. Hey, the Astros are the only kind of ones they won championship. They're bringing the championships home. They're making a October baseball. And then the Rockets are kind of there. The Texans were going to still be rebuilding, but now you can see U of H was always there. Don't get me wrong; they were always there too, but they were not brought up in the spot like they are now. And so now you see the city is really starting to rally around every single team and so I feel there could be like a little mini golden age coming within the Houston sports. So I just want to put it out there, that I was one of the first ones to say if it does kind of happen.
Well, like living in the city, it's good to see. Like, there's a different vibe in the city when all the teams are doing well. Doesn't happen very
Yes.
often, but it's just a vibe around town. Like perfect example. Last week when Houston was going against Tennessee, I was wearing my old University of Houston shirt. I was in line for crawfish. This random lady just started talking to me about hey, how do you think the guys are going to do today? Mind you, I didn't know who she was. She just saw I was wearing a Houston shirt and just started talking to me about Houston basketball. Same thing where like any other of the Houston teams, like random people will just start talking to you about it because when teams are doing well, like it brings out the camaraderie in people as well. Just random strangers just talking to, hey man, you catch the game last night, or how do you think the boys are going to do today? Like that, like it's a good feeling.
And I went to academy with a friend of mine. People were gobbling up the U of H gear over there, and they're just waiting to buy. So people want to represent the city, and now I feel this is one of those times where it's like, you know what, I'm gonna go all out with repping, because these teams are just doing so great, and it shows. One's in the championship already. Rockets about to start their finals, the playoff push here pretty soon. So it's a great time to be a basketball fan in the city of Houston.
Oh yeah, definitely. But yeah, no. So just to wrap up, so I'm gonna give my prediction
Mhm.
for tomorrow's game against the Florida Gators. Like I said, Florida to me is very similar to Duke. They're a very high scoring team. They love to run up and down the court. They're not a half court team. I think in order for Houston to have a chance, they're going to have to slow down Clayton, and they're going to have to make, just like they did with Duke, they're going to have to make Florida play their version of basketball. Because if it gets into into a shootout, Houston just doesn't have the firepower to, compete with people in a
Oh
shootout.
yeah.
But if they can get Florida to play their version of basketball, half court, I think it's going to be a very long night for Florida, just like it was for Duke yesterday. And it's going to be a close game. I think this is going to be another one of those. It's going to be one of those where it's going to come down to the final possession. And I'm going to go with Houston winning it 70-69. Similar score to how they beat Duke.
Oof. Yeah, I would pretty much gave my prediction earlier, but again, um, Walter Clayton Jr. is going to be it's tough. He moves, he's getting scrapped. I see
He reminds
he
me
was
of
getting in there
Jamal
for those
Murray.
fouls,
He
you
plays
know.
just like Jamal Murray, man. He is a tough assignment.
Yeah. So it's going to be on Houston not to be getting foul trouble. It's going to be, it's easy for that to happen when you have a player of that caliber who plays the way he does,
Yeah.
the way Will Clayton Jr. plays. So, and that's what happened in this game too with Duke. They got into the foul trouble in the beginning, but they were able to, refrain from, getting in foul trouble in the second half. But again, if they get in foul trouble early, it's going to be tough for U of H to really, assert, their defense and play their style of basketball. But I feel they've learned something in this game, playing against someone like Cooper Flag, you know, at his caliber, and they were able to slow him down. So when they watch the film, I think they can take some of the same things they did in this game and apply it to the Florida game. So that's where I see U of H kind of edging out Florida at the end. I can't give a score, but it'll be a close one. I say within 10 points.
Look, it's going to be a very close game because Florida's a high scoring team. Houston is going to be able to slow them down, but Florida's still going to get theirs. But it's really going to come down to crunch time. Who's going to make the plays at the end to win the game? Houston has been there before. Florida has not, just like Duke has not. So I think that's what really gives them the edge over the Gators for them to secure their first national championship.
And first, yeah, and then it's first time since 1984 since they've been in this position. So I'm also glad that Hakeem was there in person to watch the game. It's
Oh,
good to
it was
see him
awesome seeing
smiling.
him and Jim
Yeah,
Nance. Like, Jim Nance was
yeah,
in tears because he's also a UH alumni, and seeing him in tears now that he's retired, he can actually express his fandom a little bit more because he doesn't have to be biased anymore.
yeah. That's true. Yeah,
Seeing him in tears like that, that again, if you're a Houstonian, like that hits you right here in the heart because Jim Nance is Houston.
yeah. So I'm looking forward to the final Monday. So it's going to be a big one. It's going to be a big game for both programs. So we again, our prediction is for Houston to win. But again, just looking forward to watching the game.
Yeah, it's gonna be really gonna be celebrating with tears of lamentation or tears of jubilation. Find out next time. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Appreciate you checking us out. Make sure you follow us on Instagram in the Paint Pod, as well as on X in the Paint Pod as well. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and also make sure you follow our Skiing as well. They're going to provide great content, focusing on our Latino voices. But yeah, that'll do it for us this week, guys. We'll catch you guys next week, and we will hopefully we'll be in for a treat tomorrow night though with the national championship game. Y'all take it easy. Peace.